What is up, guys? I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining me. I'm Rick Kakis, and today we are going to be discussing the brand new event currently ongoing within Destiny 2, the Revelry. No other event, I think, has had a greater impact on the gameplay of Destiny 2. When you play during this event, your experience is drastically different. Now, the real question is that difference good or bad? There are some great things about this event, and there are some disastrous things about this event. People are boycotting the game right now, but people are also calling for more similar things to happen in future events. What the heck is going on? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video, so let's get started. So, one of the biggest, arguably the biggest feature of the Revelry is the introduction of the brand new exotic linear fusion rifle, the Arbalest. And this was a fantastic idea. I've been saying for years that Bungie should utilize exotics, the most desirable piece of loot in the game, to spice up events and limited time activities. Imagine if the Iron Banner had an exotic that you could spend tokens on. The Iron Banner would be so much more lit. Imagine if faction rallies offered an actual exotic at the end of each different faction. There would be so much more interest in those events. And the Arbalest is actually, not only is it just an exotic and by nature it's going to spice up this event, but it's actually a good exotic. In PvP, it's actually pretty competitive, and in PvE, it's quickly risen to one of the top tier exotics in the game. It's capable of outputting, especially for just a special weapon or a weapon that uses special ammo, a considerable amount of damage. It's actually insane. But there is kind of a problem that came with this, and that problem was that the Arbalest was known about, it was added into the game kind of technically when the Season of the Drifter started. You could go into the exotics, look in the collection, and look at this weapon. So the fact that everyone knew about it, there was really no surprise factor, and there was a lot of confusion that came when it was first added. How do you get this weapon? Of course, no one knew at the time. And so the fact that it's been sitting in your collections for like a month kind of took away from the mystique of this exotic. I feel like if they would have added this to the game, if no one would have known about it, and then it comes out with the Revelry, that would have been a huge amount of excitement. But still, this is mostly positive, and frankly, this is the standard going forward. I hope a new exotic is added every time there is one of these events and we can go and earn it during that event. Alright, but moving away from the exotic, another key feature of this event was the introduction of the Tonic and the different bonuses you could apply to your character. This inherently changes the game, both for the good and for the very, very bad. So you can apply the bonus to have your class ability recharge much faster, or your melee, or your grenade. Now, in PvE, this is great. Do a strike, have a way faster charging grenade, or melee or class ability. Do a raid, have the same thing. Do a story mission, have the same thing. Do the reckoning, have the same thing. And all those activities benefit from you having those bonuses. If you weren't able to beat a certain raid, for example, if you were having trouble, if you were struggling, well, the fact that you can have considerably faster grenade recharge or even class ability recharge, especially if you're using something like a Titan with Melting Point or a Warlock with Healing Rifts or Empowering Rifts, that is going to make your progress through that raid that previously you maybe haven't been able to do considerably easier. I feel like people are going to be completing those type of activities within the Revelry easier than they would otherwise. And that's actually great, giving people an opportunity to complete these activities that were maybe just outside of their skill range. However, while in PvE, again, I maintain it's a great addition, it was also applied in PvP, and there, it was not received positively, to put it lightly. Basically, what turns out is that there's actually a best of these bonuses by far. When you're comparing class ability, melee, and then grenade is just inherently more powerful. So what you can do is be a complete sweaty tryhard, play your hunter, I guess I could have just said play your hunter, and then put on something like the Shinobu's Vow, get double skip grenades, combine that with the bonus and heck a grenade ordnance mod if you're feeling frisky, and the result is this. You basically get to throw as many grenades as often as you want. You can be in a gunfight and end up throwing 3 skip grenades. And skip grenades and other grenades as well, like, it's not even skill required for the most part, as the grenade auto-tracks your enemies. So just have something on your radar, throw a couple of skip grenades on the ground, either your opponent is going to die from the skip grenades, or you finish them off with just a couple of shots. It just really has made the Crucible just grenade spam heaven right now. And although, admittedly, I kind of had fun in this match. I know the other team was actually being really good sports and weren't using the skip grenade combo, and so I was just kind of dunking on them. But I fully recognize that although I had fun in this scenario, it would be the least fun thing imaginable to be on the receiving end of someone like myself, or gosh forbid, if you get like a 6-stack of all people doing the skip grenade thing. And I'm using skip grenades because it's the most egregious example, but there are definitely other double grenades because of an exotic wombo combos that are simply terrifying right now. And if you're actually trying to go in there and compete, if you're actually in the competitive playlist and stuff, it's a nightmare right now. But to be perfectly honest, I kind of see what Bungie was trying to do, and if you're looking at purely in terms of a theory, it doesn't seem like that horrible of an idea. Have something for a limited time, like this event will go away, and spice up the entire game. Crucible is going to be different, and I'm sure there are a handful of people out there who actually prefer the Crucible during the Revelry. They prefer just spamming nades, maybe spamming melees, whatever they're going to do, and they're going to be sad when this is gone. But I think the vast majority of people, you have absolutely no way to counterplay 3 skip grenades coming at you, basically, and for the majority of people, it's just not fun. I think this definitely needed to be balanced better. For example, have melees and class abilities charge as fast as they are right now, but grenades not as egregiously to kind of balance them out, because again, grenades are clearly the best of the 3 in a PvP environment. So that's the bonuses situation. We also have the feature during the Revelry that when you get a precision headshot, enemies will produce orbs. That again seems like a great idea for PvE. Being able to go into any activity like a raid, and especially something like the Reckoning, and be able to get your super so much more often. People who are maybe struggling with tier 3 Reckoning, this is now the time that it's going to be a lot easier, and those people can now maybe complete a few tier 3s, whereas before they weren't exactly on that skill level, or they didn't have the right gear, or what have you. And so that is again a very positive feature of this event. PvP, on the other hand, I mean, as if we needed more supers than there already were. Again, anything that throws off the balance, makes it so that you're getting so much more supers and abilities, really kind of completely skews the playstyle of the Crucible, and I think the majority of people don't like that as much. Change is good, but not all change is good. And another problem that's come up is that people were getting guitar errors because of all the extra ore production. Like, something in the game was going wrong, and I mean, it happened to myself when I was testing the Arbalist in the Last Wish raid. Got guitared, kicked out, and it was happening like in several different features of the game. So they actually had to disable the orb regeneration for raids, Gambit Prime, etc. So like, one of the best things about the orb regeneration was that you would be able to get more supers in a raid, and a raid is one of those marquee activities that actually giving people some sort of edge is going to make it easier to do, and that's a very exciting thing. If you've never beat the Last Wish, maybe during the Revelry, this is your chance to actually get it done. Well, now you can't because it's disabled. So that's a very disappointing thing as well. But we do have one more feature of the Revelry, and that is the Verdant Forest. It's very much a retooled Infinite Forest from the previous event, Festival of the Lost, but this time it's a little bit different. You get seconds back to your time of an initial starting 4 minutes every time you kill an enemy. Normal red bars are worth 2 seconds, and then the yellow bars are worth 4 seconds. And the further you go, the more branches you clear, the more time you're actually going to have to defeat a host of 5 bosses. So if you just clear a tiny amount of branches, you're going to get like a minute. Like if you get to 2 different nodes, 2 different platforms essentially, you're going to get around a minute. If you get to 40, you get 3 minutes. So the further you go, the much easier of a time you're going to have defeating those 5 bosses. And honestly, I don't mind this activity. The idea of it is actually pretty sweet. It's very skill intensive in the fact that you're trying to limit the amount of time you have to spend in the Verdant Forest. You want to be as efficient as possible. So you want to do a certain amount of branches, but you don't want to really have to do 60 branches worth of killing enemies, right? You want to find that sweet spot. Maybe it's around 14 branches. You're only going to have about a minute, 10 seconds. But if someone's really, extending the time, killing all the enemies in those boss fights, and you have a great DPS strategy in terms of Nova Bombs and Tractor Cannons and all that stuff, then you can get all 5 bosses. You're going to get through by the skin of your teeth, and it's actually going to be kind of a fun experience. However, there's some kind of problems with it. Number one, the time it takes is pretty phenomenal. Like, if you aren't someone who's comfortable with killing all 5 bosses in a minute, you're looking at 40 branches cleared, and that takes absolutely forever. Also, there really doesn't seem like there's a limit to what you can do. I mean, if you go in there with even a semi-competent team, if you've got one guy with a Cataclysm Nova Warlock and the Skull of Dire Ahamkara, you can go infinitely. Like, you'll never stop. You get to branch 100. Like, you can just go as far as you want. It's actually incredibly easy to kill enemies at a very consistent pace and always stick around 3 minutes. So that kind of takes away from the challenge of this activity, and also it seems almost like reversely balanced. So if you are, I guess, more talented, more committed players and go for the longest waves, that's kind of what you want to do for the less talented players, because then you have as much time as possible to kill these bosses. Like, you don't really get any benefit from going further waves other than that extra time. There's no more bosses, there's no better rewards. So you're rewarded for doing as little as possible and just skirting by with the lowest amount of time, right? Again, doing 14 branches, clearing the 5 bosses, right? That's actually optimal. And again, it's not a terrible thing, but it seems a little weird. I would have definitely preferred the time to count down a little bit faster. Again, it really doesn't feel like any sort of challenge to extend the branches. It's so easy to do so. I would have liked to see that you actually had to have a little bit of an organized team in order to actually get to, branch 40, for example. And potentially, as you get to more and more branches, it unlocks more bosses you can fight. It unlocks better rewards. Maybe it starts dropping powerful gear, something to reward those teams that are just decimating through the branches, And so, taking a step back and looking at the Revelry event as a whole, it's really, really interesting. I mean, for each feature we went over, it had a bunch of positives and then a bunch of negatives. It seems like the Revelry is full of genuinely good and positive ideas that improve your experience in the game, or at least change your experience in the game for this limited time event. And then terrible ideas that ruin your experience for other aspects. Like, it's really, really weird. I feel like this would have been a much better event if the bonuses perhaps only applied to PvE, if the Arbalest was kept secret, if the orb generation only applied to PvE as well, and if there was some changes to the Verdant Forest. However, I mean, we kind of inherently have a problem with that scenario, because then we're going to get all these changes during the Revelry for PvE, and then what? The Crucible is exactly the same, other than the introduction of the Arbalest? I mean, that doesn't sound very fun, but judging from what I've seen, that's what the PvP community wants, right? Or at least part of them. I think you could get away with maybe some orb production, maybe some bonuses from the Tonic, but not as aggressive as they are now if they only impacted quick play. Or, a much better idea actually, if you just had a separate playlist where those things were active, and so people who wanted to experience those changes could go into that playlist, and if you wanted the classic quick play or classic comp or whatever, you could go into those playlists. I think that would be a great compromise. However, of course, I'm not sure how difficult that would be to actually introduce into the game. Regardless, I think, again, Bungie should be commended on having an event that introduced many beneficial things, genuinely changed up how you play the game. Because you are playing Destiny 2 very differently right now during the Revelry, but they maybe got to think a little bit more about especially how these things impact PvE. They got to think more about the consequences of bringing these things into the game. And hopefully they will learn these lessons for the next event to hit Destiny 2. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, found it informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickKakis. That's linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.